Good morning. So the theme today is about being at ease and being steady or balanced in the postures. And this comes directly from the Yoga Sutras, the philosophy of yoga that goes back about 2,000 years. And at that time, there probably weren't the same number and the same emphasis on physical postures as there is today. A lot of that came in the last couple hundred years, the real gymnastic kind of yoga. But originally, the main thing was, can we be stable and comfortable? And the word pose or asana, that's translated from the Yoga Sutras, um, literally means seat. So sitting in a seated position and being stable and comfortable was possibly the intention of that instruction. But we can take that into every single pose that we do. Can we find stability or grounding in the pose? And can we find ease and comfort? And in a lot of ways, those two concepts, stability and ease, could relate to strength and flexibility. Right? So when we're strong, we feel stable, we feel connected, our joints feel stable. But if we're only strong and really full of muscles, then we get tight, and there's not a lot of flow or flexibility. So we need to balance that strength with flexibility. Too much flexibility and we create instability in the joints and weakness. And so it's hard to feel that sense of being together, all together, muscles and stability, so that flexibility and stability working together. Today we're going to practice sitting. So we'll sit at the beginning of the class, we'll sit at the end of class. Normally we start and end lying down, but we're going to start and end seated today. And in between, we're going to work on the muscles, the strength, the flexibility, the stability, the ease, the flow that allows you to be able to hopefully sit more comfortably. That will be something you get to decide or see or determine in your own body. So we're going to start sitting. You might find it helpful to have a chair. If you want to sit on a chair, that's totally fine. If you want to sit on the floor, that's also fine, but you might want a blanket or a block, or if you have one, a meditation cushion to sit on. So the higher you get your hips up, for most people, the easier it is to sit comfortably. So I'm going to see you over on my cushion, and I'll give you a few instructions on how to get hopefully as comfortable as possible to begin with. So you might notice here I have this, I've got my slippers on, take those off because I don't need those for yoga. This nice cushion, and this one in particular is made from buckwheat hull, so it kind of forms to a shape that stays firm under your butt. You can get some that are filled with cotton and they're a little firmer, they don't form to a shape as much. You can also use a blanket or a block to sit on. So the main thing when you're sitting, or standing for that matter, is that there are natural curves in your spine. And the inner back comes inward, it's concave. And many times when we're sitting, we're kind of hunched over, and the lower back's actually rounded out away from the front of the body. So we want the lower back to come to its natural position, and that has everything to do with the positioning of the pelvis. So when the pelvis is rolled back, the lower back rounds. When the pelvis is come forward, the lower back arches. When we have a neutral pelvis, when the pelvis is just level, the lower back has for most people, has a slight inward curve. So if you can't find that inward curve, my recommendation is to sit up a little higher. So you can either roll up your blanket or plump up your cushion, or if you're using a pillow, sometimes a pillow is quite soft and you sink into it, but you might fold it over and get it a little more firm, or sometimes a couch cushion is good because it's a little bit firmer. But sitting on a chair is totally fine. It's not about sitting cross-legged on the floor, but it's really more about the shape of the spine. So if you're sitting on a chair, you just want both feet flat on the floor out in front of you, and you're sitting a little forward on the chair, so you're not rounding and leaning back into the chair itself. See if you can find the position of the shoulders over the hips. So often we kind of lean forward. So see if you can sit right on those sit bones, the two bones at the bottom of your pelvis, and let your shoulders find a balance point over your hips. This is where a mirror or a friend could come in handy to kind of check and let you know, give you some feedback. Often, especially these days, we have the head kind of poking forward, and that has to do with looking at our cell phones or computers or driving a car, and that can put a tremendous amount of strain on the neck. So we want to draw the chin slightly down and move it back a little bit so that the holes of your ears line up with your shoulders. Again, a friend to help give you feedback is helpful here. You can't really do this with a mirror because as soon as you turn to the side, you change the position of your head, but it could help a little bit at least. Shoulders drop down away from the ears. If you're sitting cross-legged, you can sit with one foot in front of the other, or one ankle on top of the other, or even one foot up on top of the opposite leg if you like. Full lotus may be a possibility for some of you where one ankle is, or one foot is on top of each opposite thigh. But there's no need, and it's a fairly extreme pose for the hips and the knees and the ankles. So sitting comfortably is good. So you could have your legs stretched out in front of you, and then check in with your hands and arms. So let them be comfortable. They can rest on your legs or in your lap if you like. And then we'll take about a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes here, and do a little bit of a body scan check-in. And the intention here is that at the end of the class, we'll do a similar check-in, and we'll see if anything has changed. So if you like, you can close your eyes or maybe just cast your gaze down and keep a soft focus. And tune into the part of your body that's on the ground or connected in some way to the ground through your cushion, perhaps. Feel where your legs or your feet make contact with the ground and notice any sensations, anything that's present for you there. Then tune into the area around the sit bones, the two bones at the bottom of the pelvis that you can feel perhaps on your cushion or seat. Notice if it feels like the weight is tilting forward or back at all, or if it feels like the weight comes straight down onto those 2 points. And then notice any sensations in the muscles and the sort of the sensations in the area of the thighs, maybe into the hips, the hip flexors at the very front where the pelvis meets the thighs. So we're not trying to change anything at this point. We're trying to make a mental map of the body and how it feels today. Notice any sensations around the sides and the back of the hips below the waist. Notice what's present, what you feel, what you're aware of. And then check in with the belly. Notice if you're holding or if there's tension in the belly or you're using those muscles to hold you upright in some way. And again, there's no need to change anything or no judgment, no right or wrong here. But tuning in and noticing. Notice your lower back as well, the area between your ribs and your hips or the top of the pelvis. And notice any sensations, any impressions that you might have in this area of your lower back. And then tune into the area of your upper back between the shoulder blades and across the back of the rib cage. Notice what's present there. And notice your breathing. Does your breathing feel easeful and light? Does it feel heavy and labored? Notice the area around your shoulders and what's present there, as well as your arms and your hands. Notice if you feel any gripping in your hands. And again, just noticing that. You don't need to change it. Then check in with your neck, your jaw, and all around your face and head. Seeing what's present, what you notice. Before we get into some bigger movement, we'll do a little bit of movement here seated, but if you feel like you need to change your position, if you've become uncomfortable, just go ahead, stretch out your legs or do whatever you need to do to change your position, and then we'll do some work for the neck. So turning the head to one side, and then make a little half circle coming across your chest, come up to the other side, and then circle back. So you can go side to side like that, or if you want, you can make a full circle. You're just going to be cautious not to let your head fall back behind your shoulders. So one way of thinking about this is if there's a clock in front of your face, you're tracing the numbers of the clock with your nose, one way and then the other. So making some nice circles or just a side to side movement. You can let the head tilt to one side, and if you want a little more stretch, take the opposite hand, reach to the ground, and walk your fingers away a little bit. And then back to the center, to the other side. And again, you can walk your fingers away for a little more stretch. And then coming back to a neutral position, we'll lift the chest, draw the shoulders back, take the head back in line with the spine, but not throwing it back. And then round your back, let your chin come in, head come down. You can inhale as you extend or arch the back, exhale as you flex or round the back. Right, and then let's come back up to a seated position. Bring the palms of your hands together and press gently into the palms and move the heels of your hands toward your lap or toward the ground. And then if you want a little different stretch, you can keep the bases of your fingers together and let the heels of your hands move away. Stretch the fingers a little bit more. And then separate the hands and do some circles with your wrists. You can do this with your hands open or your hands in fists. And try a few circles each direction. And then give it a shake. So if you've been sitting in one position, you may want to stretch your legs out and give them a little shake. If they've fallen asleep, wake them up. I'm just taking a little mental snapshot of how that felt sitting so that we can come back to that at the end of the class. So we're going to come now onto all fours. And if anyone needs a blanket under your knees and you have something handy, you can do that, or even double up the mat if you want a little extra cushioning. I've got a nice carpet here and my nice thick mat, so I'm good. So from here, letting the tail lift, chest forward, keep your elbows soft as if you're drawing your chest between your arms. Then as you exhale, head comes down. You can move your hips back towards your heels if you want, or stay upright. And repeat. So coming up with the breath in, rounding, or moving to child's pose on your exhale. We're going to be focusing today on strengthening and bringing a bit of flexibility to the hips and spine. So next time you come to all fours, vary the movements. You can make a little half circle or a full circle with your hips going, down to one side, maybe circling around, coming up to the other side and back around. Or you can keep going in the same direction. Great, and come back to the center. You can take your knees a little wider, toes close together. If it's comfortable for you, bring your hips back towards your heels. If not, you can always keep your hips a little higher. Come down onto your forearms or hips right back toward the heels, and then maybe the head rests on your hands or on a block or on the ground. So finding the position that's best for you, and we'll stay here for a few breaths. Now, if your body prefers to keep moving, just go ahead and keep moving. And then we'll come back up to all fours. Take the knees in underneath the hips again. And we'll add a lifting movement for the arms and legs. We'll do opposite pairs. So if you take your right arm, you're going to take your left leg, stretch them out roughly parallel to the ground, reaching out. Take a breath in here. And then as you exhale, bring the hand down, round your back, or go to child's pose. And then the other pair, left arm, right leg, reaching out. And then coming back. If you find you're really unbalanced, you might be inadvertently doing same arm and leg, which tends to be a lot more challenging. Continue a few more at your own pace. You can either keep moving here, or once you get back to the right arm, left leg where we started, you could stay for a few breaths. Think about the arm that's reaching out, that shoulder drawing back, squeezing through the hip and thigh of the back leg, and then reaching from fingers to toes. If you've been staying on that side, try the other side as well. So the shoulder that's reaching forward, you want to draw it back, find a lift through the heart, and strength through the leg. Good, come back down. You can take a moment in child's pose again, either knees apart or knees together if you prefer. Take a few breaths there, whatever version of child's pose is good for you. And then we're going to come back to all fours. And you have a choice either to work from all fours to child's pose a few more times, or you can start to bring in downward dog if that is a pose that works for you. So you'd inhale, arch, exhale, child's pose. Inhale back to all fours, and then either back to child's pose or lifting to downward dog. And then you'll come back to all fours, back to child's pose, back to all fours, and then again, maybe downward dog. For those of you who like downward dog and find it a comfortable pose, you could stay for a few breaths. Child's pose is also an option here if you prefer. And then eventually coming back to all fours, you could sit on your heels for a moment and do a few circles to release the wrists if you need to. And if this is comfortable, because this isn't comfortable for everybody, give a little shake. So we're going to bring one leg forward, the left foot forward between the hands. You can use blocks to help you if you need them. And you can either step forward from all fours, like so, or you can first come to downward dog and then step forward. So either way, you want to have your left foot forward. Right foot could step a little forward, so make it nice, easy stance. If you're using blocks, you may want to bring them a little higher, but you can also do this with the hands on the ground or up above the knee. So we're going to bend the knee just over the ankle, so not too much bend, and then move it straighter. You can let the head come down as you move the legs straighter. Then come up with a long spine. So this is where blocks can be handy, is to find a little lift in the chest, press down into your back foot, and then let the head come forward. So inhaling, lengthen. Exhale, release. From this bent knee position, so if your hands are on blocks, you could come up onto your fingertips. If your hands are on your knee, you can keep them there. If they're on the ground and you can reach, you either come up to your fingertips or bring your hands to your knees. So you want to find a little arch in the back. So we're not rounding here, but lifting up through the tail, through the chest. And then from there, try extending your arms to the sides if you want more challenge. So you'll feel your legs and your back working a little more. From there, you can also lift all the way up into Warrior One. Find your grounding here. Both feet press down, the front knee over, the ankles, shoulders relaxed. Engage your core just a bit. So you're bringing your ribs and your hips towards each other. The tailbone lengthening down. From here, we'll bring the hands down to the ground or to your blocks. And we're going to switch sides. So simple switch, step forward, and then change sides. Or more advanced switched, come to downward dog, and then bring the other foot forward. So your right foot is forward now. Left foot turns out. And same thing here. So we'll bend the front knee, find a little lift. You don't want to crank your head up and look towards the sky. Look slightly ahead and down. And then release the head down as you move the legs straighter. Good, a few more breaths like that. And then we'll keep that front knee bent, press into both feet, even think about drawing the right hip back a little bit. Feel nice and stable and square in the hips. And then find as much ease in the effort of this position if you choose to lift the arms to the sides. You can do this also with the hand on the knee, a little easier. But find that arch. Good, and then from there, press into the feet. You can lift all the way up to Warrior One. Shoulders down. Again, gently engage the core. So you're bringing the ribs and hips together or closer together in the front, which has the effect of lengthening and dropping the tailbone down. If you feel discomfort in the lower back or in the hip, you can try moving the front leg straighter or bending the back knee a little bit to relieve some of that pressure. Great, let's bring the hands forward. Again, it could be to the knee or blocks or ground. And this time we'll step forward. I'm bringing the feet together. Take your hands up to your knees, bend your knees a little. And again, find that arch, lifting the tail, lifting the chest. You're breathing in here. And then exhale, fold forward. Inhale, you're just straightening your arms, hands on the knees, lengthening. And then bend the elbows, let your chest come toward your thighs. Again. Good. Again, if you want a little more challenge this time, as you come up, we'll stay a few breaths. And if you want more effort here, arms to the sides. If you still want more effort, arms overhead. And then lift all the way up. And release. Right, you can wiggle it, shake it out a bit. And then from here, take the feet a little bit apart. Soften your knees and roll the shoulders. 1, and then the other. Go the other way as well if you like. And again, give it a little shake out. And bring your feet in underneath your hips. Find your balance here. So when we were lying down, or sorry, sitting up, we were finding that balance of hips over under the shoulders and head over the shoulders. So everything was lined up. And now we want to line everything up over the heels. So there's a tendency, and if I turn to the side, you might be able to see this if you're looking at your screen, and I'll exaggerate a bit. We tend to come onto the balls of the feet, collapse the lower back, stick the hips out forward, and round the upper back. So there's that kind of position. So as we move the thighs back over the heels, the belly comes back, the lower back comes to its natural curve. And then there's a little more opening as the shoulders come over the hips, head over the shoulders. Same position, chin slightly tucked in, head moving back. So feel your weight go into your heels. Feel the stability of this pose, connected to the earth through both feet, but also find the ease, the openness, the effortlessness when you find that balance. There's just enough muscular tension to hold you upright, but not so much that there's a feeling of tenseness or strain in the body. So from here, we'll work a little bit on balance. So you can bring your hands to your hips, or if you're near a wall and you want to hold on to the wall or your chair, feel free to do that. And again, weight slightly into the heels. And we're going to shift the weight to one foot. Now, as you do that, don't let the hip go out to the side. Just find that little shift, and you can come onto the toes of your other foot, maybe even lift the foot, shift to the other side. Again, maybe lift and down. So notice how your balance feels today, and we will be doing a little bit of work that requires balance, but the point of the work is not about balance. So it's much better if you've got a chair or a wall to hold on to than trying to do the moves while you're flailing around. And some days balance is easier than other days. So be honest with yourself and use what you need to support you. So I'm just going to grab a chair here, so that if I need it, I've got that support. So we'll start by pressing down into one foot. And we're going to work with the hip flexors, these muscles in the front of the hip, including muscles into the thigh. And there's one big muscle, psoas, that comes up from the top of the thigh all the way into the lower back. And to access that, we need to lift the knee up, flexing at the hip joint. So as we lift the knee up, we can come to about parallel to the ground, and then bring it down. And then try on the other side, lifting about parallel, thigh about parallel to the ground, and come down. So try that a couple times each side. And when we lift the leg this high, we're recruiting some of the hip flexors, but not the big ones. So if we want to and are able to work with the deeper hip flexor muscles, the psoas and iliacus, try lifting the leg up to about parallel to the ground and see if you can bring it up a little higher. You might even use your hands to draw the leg in and then see if you can hold it there. And then bring it down. And then other side, you can bring the leg up, maybe lift it higher or use your hands to help, and then see if you can stay. Good. So one thing to caution you about, which is quite common here, is we lift the knee to here, and then when we try to lift higher, we kind of do something like this. So we don't actually change the relationship of the flexion at the hip. So to lift the leg higher, try to do that without bending the opposite knee and scooching your pelvis under. So you want to keep nice and tall. And see if you can hold there for a couple of breaths. Same thing on the other side, once more. So without scooching the hips under or bending the standing leg, can you lift and hold? And so that's one way that we can work with the hips. We've got 5 other ways we're going to look at today. So there's flexion, there's adduction and abduction, and then there's internal rotation and external rotation, and then what's called extension, where the leg goes back behind. So we'll work with each of those movements, and the idea is that we're trying to create some strength and balance all around the hips. So we're not just focusing on one area, but all ways that the hip moves. So let's try some of those movements, and then we'll put them together. So you can come up onto the toes of one leg, and bring the knee across your body. And you're squeezing with the adductors, the inner thighs. Try not to twist your body. So keep your body pointing forward and squeeze the leg across and release. And then come up onto the toes of the other foot. And again, squeeze across. So moving across the center line and release. And then we'll try abduction, taking the knee away. So squeezing where you need to, as if you're trying to draw that knee back behind you, and then release. And then other leg, squeezing, drawing that leg back. Notice where you feel the muscles engaging. Good, and release. So the next one, maybe it'll be easier to see from the side. Internal rotation. If you bend your knee a little bit, actually I think it's going to be easier to see from the front. Bend your knee a little bit, and then let your foot go out to the side, and your whole thigh rotates inward, knees staying close together. And then try the other side. Bend a little, knee inward. So try not to twist your whole body. So just the leg working. And then release. And then the opposite. So bend the knee a little bit. This time the knee will go out to the side and the foot will lift up in front. And then other side. And release. And then the last one I'll show you from the side is to take the leg back. You can bend the knee a little, and without leaning forward, you want to lift the leg. Feel your glutes engage. And other side, straight back. Good, and release. Take your feet apart, bring your hands to your hips. You can do a few circles with the hips, releasing any tension. So sometimes if some of those muscle groups are weak, we might feel some shaking or some tension or challenge there. So back off a little bit, do a little bit less rather than more. Right, so let's put all those moves together on each side. So we'll do one side at a time. So we're going to lift up, maybe lift a little higher, and release. Bringing the toes to the ground, move the knee across the body in adduction. Move the knee away from the body, abduction. Come back to the center, bend the knee a little and take the foot out to the side, knee in. Internal rotation, then external rotation, knee goes out, foot comes forward and up. And then reaching back, extension. And release. Other side, lifting the knee, maybe lifting a little higher. Toes down, adduction across the body. Abduction away. Internal rotation, foot goes out, knee comes in. external rotation, foot forward, knee out. Lifting a little with the foot if you can. And then extension, reaching back. Good, and then let that go, give it a little shake. So that little series you could do, you could do that every day if you wanted. We'll do a few stretches afterwards to release those big muscles that we've just worked. But first, since we're all nicely warmed up and worked with balance, let's work with tree pose, which is a pose that works with abduction, a little bit external rotation, but mostly abduction. So you're going to come onto the toes of one foot. So the other foot is your standing leg. And rotate the knee to the side, as we've already done in abduction. Think about using the muscles of your butt to draw that knee back. So this is not a passive position. Often in tree pose, the knee tends to come forward. We want to think of it going to the side and using those muscles of your butt to make that happen. If you feel balanced here and you want a more challenging pose, you can bring the foot in to the ankle, or you can lift it up onto the calf. You want to avoid pressure against the knee, but you could bring the foot right up into the thigh. So you can either hold on or not, as works for you. The hands could come to the sides or maybe overhead. So you're drawing that knee back, opening the front of the hips, and drawing around into some engagement in the back of the hips. When you're ready to come out of the pose, you're going to release the foot. You can give it a little shake out. And come back to Tadasana. Both feet on the ground, weight into the heels, hips over the heels, shoulders over the hips, head over the shoulders. Shift to the other foot. Come onto your toes. Rotate the knee and feel the muscles that have to engage to keep that knee moving back. You could bring the foot in closer to give yourself a little more challenge on the balance end of things, or lift the foot either onto the shin or into the thigh. And then again, if you need support with balance, arms to the side or to your chair, or you could lift the arms overhead, shoulders relax. You can bend the arms. There's no need to be tense here. And then when you're ready, release the arms, release the leg, and again, give everything a little shake out. So let's come back to a little bit of forward bending, and we'll work with the muscles of the back a little bit here. So taking a breath in, coming up. We want to come down with a little bit of an arch. Bring your hands to your thighs, and then you can slide down, letting your back round. When we come up, we're going to bring the hands first to the thighs, find that arch, and then lift all the way up. Keeping the knees soft and a little bent as you do this. So come forward, slide down, let the head release as well. When you come up, find that length and come all the way up. So again. Good, maybe one more here. Great. And then we'll do one more standing pose, which the intent is to strengthen the back and the thighs a little bit in Utkatasana, or actually Ardha Utkatasana, the half chair pose or half squat. And so we're just going to come down as if we're sitting in a chair. And your chair could be, the easier version of a higher chair. Your chair might be a little lower, middle version, or your chair might be even lower, more challenging version, right? So you can choose how low you go to make things more or less challenging. And then where your hands are also make the pose more challenging. So hands to thighs, easier. Arms in front, a little more challenging. Arms overhead, more challenging. So we'll do a few times dynamically, and you can try different positions, see what feels good for you, and then we'll stay for a few breaths. So taking a breath in, come up. Good. Exhale. You can choose your hand position and choose how far you sit. Again, coming up with a breath in, maybe try a different arm position, maybe a different hip position. Coming up with a breath in. Exhale, try again. And you want to try and keep a little bit of a lift in the chest. So not collapsing forward, but keeping that little bit of arch in the back as you lower down. With the arms up, it's a little harder. Good. And then come upright, give a little shake out. And hopefully you've had enough opportunities there to choose a position that is challenging enough to feel like you're working, but not so challenging that it feels like tension. So you want to keep those qualities of stability and ease in every pose. So too much effort creates tension. Too little effort doesn't really do anything, doesn't work to strengthen. So when you're ready, taking a breath in, good. Coming down into the pose, whichever version you choose, shoulders back, chest lifting, hips sinking. Relax your neck, your face, your jaw. You can change your position if it gets to feel like tension for you. And take a couple more breaths. Good. Lifting all the way up, breathing in. And exhale to release. And again, you can just give it a little shake out. And we're going to come down to the ground. So you can get down there however you like. And if you have blocks or cushions or blankets, you might want to keep them a little handy so we can support the knees in Supta Baddha Konasana. But first, coming down onto your mat, coming onto your back. And you can let the hands come to rest on your body. Knees bent, feet on the floor. And take a few breaths here, letting your body settle. So do one more pose here that helps to strengthen the back of the body, the thighs, in fact, the quads and the back of the legs, the hamstrings, the hips, as well as the low back. And that's a bridge pose. So in bridge pose, you want to stack your heels right under your knees as much as possible. Arms come down to your sides. You're going to press down into the feet till you feel your lower back flatten toward the ground. And then with your next inhale, you'll lift the arms as you lift the hips, coming up into bridge. And then rolling down with an exhale. So lifting with an inhale. And coming down with an exhale. One more like that. And then this time you can choose to stay in the pose for a few breaths. And here I recommend keeping the arms down. You can turn the palms up and let the hands move slightly away from the body. Again, press into your feet, press down into your lower back. And then as you inhale, start to slowly lift the hips up. And find a position here that's comfortable for you. You can come out of the pose anytime you need to. And if you want a little more expansion across the collarbones and the chest, you can rock to one side and roll the shoulder under and then to the other side. And then arms can just stay relaxed, or you can bend the arms to press down a little more. Some of you may find it easy and comfortable to reach your hands under you with straight arms pressing down. If that creates any tension, just let that go. And then when you're ready to come down, you're going to wiggle your shoulders apart if you've brought them together and come back to the ground. Knees to chest. You can move the knees forward and back a few times, exhaling as the knees come in and inhaling as the knees move away. Right, and then let's take the left foot to the floor and take the right ankle over the left thigh. So to get a little more stretch, and this is for most people a stretch somewhere in the outer hip of the leg that's lifted, sometimes into the inner thigh, depending where your special tightness is. And if you want more stretch than you get just being here on the ground, you could take one of your blocks under your left foot, or you could take your right hand between your legs, left hand on the outside, and clasp your hands behind your thigh. If you can't quite reach, sometimes a belt is helpful just to extend your arms a bit. So here you could rock a bit side to side. Notice where you feel that stretch. And then eventually, when you're ready, you can switch sides. Finding that position that works best for you here. It certainly doesn't need to be what I'm doing, but anything that gives you the stretch in the outer hip that feels right for you. So again, it could be a block under your foot, could be the foot right on the floor, or reaching behind the right thigh and drawing the legs towards you till you feel a good stretch. You can rock a bit side to side if you like. And then coming back to the center, you're going to bring your feet to the ground and bring your knees together, ankles together. And we'll open the knees with a breath in and bring the knees back together with an exhale. Squeeze the knees together, press down as you finish your exhale, and then inhale to open the knees. Exhale to bring them together. And again, taking your time. If you like, you can stay a few breaths, letting the soles of the feet come together, the knees release towards the sides. And here you may find that having your blocks to support your knees, or could be blankets or pillows or cushions, whatever helps. You want to find a position where you feel a little bit of stretch, but it doesn't feel like there's any tension. You're not holding or gripping those muscles of the inner thighs to stay in this position, but you're able to relax and let things release here on their own. So you're not going to your utmost range of motion and hanging there gritting your teeth, but finding that nice easeful position that you can hang out in. The arms can be on the floor or on your body, doesn't matter. And then let's slowly bring the knees together. And you can take the knees together, wiggle the feet a little apart, and let the knees fall together for a few breaths here, just letting the inner thighs release. We now have a bit of internal rotation as opposed to the this is adduction and internal rotation as opposed to abduction and external rotation. And then to release the hips and the low back a little bit before we come back to sit, we'll take the feet about hip distance apart, take the arms to the sides. And if you've got your blocks here, you're probably going to want to move them so that you've got room for your knees. So your knees will go one way, the head can reach the other way, exhaling. And then back to center on an inhale, going the other way with an exhale. So you're coming back to the center with an inhale, going to either side with an exhale, moving at your own pace. You can either continue with this movement, or if you're someone who tends to have a lot of tension up in the upper back between the shoulder blades, pretty common area, you might do the last few moves with your hands clasping your elbows over your chest. You've got a little square shape over your chest. And then as the knees go one way, you can let the arms and the head release the other way. And just see if that works for you. If not, go back to the first version with the arms on the ground. Eventually coming back to the center, we'll bring the knees to the chest. And again, that forward and back movement. Exhale, knees to chest. Inhale, arms straight, knees move away. This is called Apanasana. You can vary the movement if you like, making circles or rocking side to side. Just tuning in and seeing what feels good to you here. Stretch both legs toward the ceiling, both arms either behind you or out to the sides, and then knees to chest, hands to knees. And again, stretching out with the breath in, and then into the center as you exhale. Good, and then when you bring your knees to your chest this time, stay here. We are going to come back to sit, so you can get there however you like. You can roll to your side first, or if it's comfortable for you, you might just rock yourself right back upright. And then take your cushion or your block or your blanket or your chair, whatever you've chosen as your seat today. And again, getting the hips higher than the knees. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier, but getting the hips higher than the knees is kind of key here to getting the spine into the right shape. So you can even try this with me. If you bring your knees up in front of you, if you're sitting on the floor, you might find your lower back rounds. It has to. And when you try to sit upright, you have to really use a lot of effort because the pelvis meets the thighs and it gets in the way. So when we get the thighs out of the way, the pelvis can come a little more forward. So if your hips are quite tight, you might use blocks or pillows under your knees to support. And also, if your hips are tight enough that your knees are up here somewhere and it's pushing your pelvis back, then get your hips higher. Add another blanket or cushion underneath your bum, or come to sit on a chair. So take your time. If you're watching this in the recording, you can always pause the recording and get what you need so that you're really comfortable. And then find your way to that seated position where your lower back is in its natural inward curve. The shoulders are over the hips, head over the shoulders, chin is slightly down and back. The hands comfortably on your knees or thighs or in your lap. Again, whatever works for you. So we'll do that same body scan awareness that we started with. So again, you can close your eyes or soften your gaze looking forward and down. And check in with how your legs feel, your feet, whatever's connected to the earth, the sit bones, any part of your thighs, shins, feet. Notice sensation there. And then check in with your hip flexors here in the front of the hips. And all the muscles around the sides and the backs of the hips. Notice any sensations around the pelvis in the front or the back of the body. And tune into your belly. Notice if you're holding tension in your abdomen. Notice your low back. Be aware of any sensations that are present in your upper back, between your shoulder blades, across your chest into the collarbones, the shoulders and arms. Notice if there's gripping in your hands. And tune in and notice your neck, your throat, your jaw, your face. And then you might be aware of any difference between how you felt at the beginning of class and how you feel now. And let's just take maybe another minute or so, noticing what's present, noticing any difference between now and earlier when we started the class. Some people find there's more ease in sitting, but that may not be the case for you. Maybe feel more ease in some ways and more tension in other ways. So this is not about having reached a particular conclusion, but about really tuning in and noticing, trying to find that stability and ease in this posture as well as every other posture that we do. If you'd like to stay a little bit longer and add a seated meditation to the end of your practice here, you can just either ignore my instructions or stop the video if you're watching in recording. And stay seated, maybe using the breath as a focus, or as we've done in the past, using the sounds around you or sensations in the body to bring you back to the present when you notice that you've wandered. And if you're ready to move on with your day, bring the palms together. And perhaps creating the intention of bringing these qualities of stability and ease into every aspect of your life where you notice that they're missing, where you could use a little more stability, a little more ease. Can you bring those qualities in through your intention? Namaste. Have a great day.